Hello, hello, and welcome. My name is Queen Diva, and I am the guest host for the R&B. Get a lot of people joining in quickly. Yes, I'm the guest host for the Rhythm and Blues Preservation Society Music Spotlight. We are doing a special Sunday edition because our guest is available today, and I'm just waiting on our guest to show. I want to welcome our president, CEO Perry Thompson. He's on the line, and looks like our guest is here. Our guest is here. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest, Jason Moran, Houston, Texas. I got on my Houston Rockets shirt, and I am actually in Houston, and just waiting on. See, we invite Jason on so he can come. And I want to welcome everyone to the show. This is the Rhythm and Blues Preservation Society Music Spotlight. We do it every Monday. Usually do it every Monday night, but we are doing a special edition for our guest, Jason. I just gave him the invite. And yes, greetings to all who are jumping on. And make sure he got his invite. Let me try it again. Okay, I just invited you again. Jason, all you gotta do is just click. There you look at you.
Sometimes I don't know what's happening. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
All right. I see you got all that H red on. Nice.
H-Town, Rockets. You know, I had to do it. Since I'm here in Houston, I said, let me wear my Rocket shirt for a
Yeah.
fellow Houstonian. How you
Nice.
doing, sir? How you doing?
I'm making it day by day, just like everybody else. So I'm glad to be with you this afternoon, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. You look great. I haven't seen you. Oh my goodness. Uh, uh,
But here I am today. How about
Huh?
that?
Huh? I think the last time I saw you when you played the camera, and I was at
All right.
TSU. I was
Good.
a producer at TSU's radio station. So it was great to see you all these years later. So let's jump into it.
Yes, yes, yes.
When did you fall in love with jazz?
Well, I don't know. It's tough to say. Because I think I didn't know I was falling in love with it. My parents would listen to KTSU in Houston, the radio station at Texas Southern University. We'd listen to it in the car. And I wouldn't say my brothers and I really wanted to listen to what my parents were listening to, but nevertheless, we were there listening to it every day. My parents kind of taught us the value of listening to all black music, all kinds of black music. And I think I fell in love with it though because I felt a disconnect with what I was learning as a pianist, as a Suzuki piano player. Like a kid taking piano lessons, and I don't know, looking at white alabaster portraits of Mozart and Beethoven. And that's cool. I like that too. But then I saw and I heard Thelonious Monk playing, and I looked at the record cover, and I was like, who is this brother? And I wanted to be like Thelonious Monk, and actually that started everything. And that's when I fell in love with it. I was like 13 or 14. And since then is not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful for Thelonious Monk and my parents listening to Thelonious Monk, thankful for that kind of intersection or interception in my life, because now that has carried me around the world.
So why Thelonious? Why him instead of all the other pianists? Why him in particular?
When you're a teenager, you're going through puberty, so you don't know who you are identity wise. And I think I was looking for something on the piano, and the piano is also an instrument I was ready to quit because I hated it. And there's something about hearing Thelonious Monk play around midnight, and something about I always talk about the way his left hand sounds, the beat on it, and the way he just plays three courses of this melody, and it all just kind of like, I don't know, it just came out like a dance. And I was like, I want to know how to do that. And then since it was the first thing that I heard that it was like grabbed me, that's what I compare everything else to. So it could have been a different piano player, but it happened to be the dopest piano player, Thelonious Monk. And also it was a time, I mean, this is a Houston history moment when the the politician Mickey Leland died in a plane crash, you know? And I walked into my parents' room and they were watching TV, watching the news report of this crash that Mickey Leland died in Africa. And but they weren't listening to the report from the television. The only sound was Thelonious Monk playing around midnight. And I thought, and I walked over to the record player and looked and I was like, what is this? And I immediately tried to go downstairs and play it. I couldn't pick out one note that Thelonious Monk was playing, but that began my journey though.
Wow. So
Yeah.
how did you gravitate to the piano? Is it you started at 6? Did you start playing at 6?
I started playing at 6. My parents, I think they just wanted to keep my brothers and I busy, you know. And that was fun, you know. So also I went to McGregor Elementary, and McGregor was a magnet school, and everybody played an instrument. So my brothers and I, we all played violin. And so, you know, it just was an assumption that every kid would have an instrument. But then they put my brothers and I in piano classes and my older brother in violin. And, you know, it's just something I think it's something for us to do. You get to interview my father, who's still alive, about what he thought. But I know my mom was the one who came with me to all my lessons and took notes in all the lessons. And my mom, a beautiful soul, she was the one who was really there kind of like trying to have me, not necessarily reach excellence, but she would make me grade myself.
Okay.
You know, 3 stickers and it would be like good, good, so, I can't even remember now. The best one was excellent, good, and I don't know, something
needs
like
improvement.
Yeah, baby, yes. It was like that. Of course, I always put I was excellent today, even though I knew I wasn't. You know what I mean? But that's really where it started, and being in a neighborhood that also supported the music too. So you know that you could listen to a radio station that was nearby that was playing the scope of us. It was, you know, it was great.
So do you think when she was grading you, that was the reason why you wasn't liking it? What was the reason why you wasn't liking it?
I wasn't liking it because any kid, well, okay, let me say this. Most kids don't want to practice piano. You know, did you practice an instrument when you were a kid?
Clarinet, and I hated it.
Okay. That's my point. That's exactly my point. You know, because we get them, we're like, yo, why am I doing it? And then some children, you know, really love it as soon as they meet their instrument, right?
Yeah.
I had to really work towards the love. And, you know, I was thankful for the years that I hated the instrument too, because I think that kind of made me love it in a different way. You know what I mean? But it, you know, it's, I think, you know, I'm raising kids now. My kids, they're twins, they're 14. And,
Okay.
you know, they play violin and guitar, and they kind of made it through age 12, and they were like, okay, we're done.
Wow.
But, you know, but they, you know, but I was like, you got to at least know how to make music in this house. You got to know how to make some sound. Alicia Hall Moran and Jason Moran, do you play? No, I don't know how to make any songs. Nope.
Oh,
That's not going to happen.
not going to work. That's not going to work. Wow, that's so interesting. So your sons don't play anymore? They don't play?
They still play. They know how to play. Let me say that. They know how to play. Do I make them practice? No, I don't make them practice. They have found, I think, the things that they want to do in their lives right now. They go towards high school. So, you know, I support them in wherever they want to go, you know.
That is so interesting. And I'm so glad you share that, because a lot of people just assume that artists who are successful at what they do, that they always loved what they were doing. And that's not always the case. And then really appreciate practice. How important is practice? How important
It's extremely important. It's extremely important. And it's extremely important to listen to how you sound when you practice, you know, to listen back to your practice sessions. You got to spend the hours and the hours in seclusion, basically working on this stuff, whether it's the technique, whether it's learning songs and changing keys or transcribing solos or listening to records is also practicing, you know. So there's a major part of that I think, who wants to be thorough in their understanding about music, that they have to research. And researching sound is, you know, is tough because it's not quite written down, you know. You couldn't buy the book that had Thelonious Monk, all his solos written down. So you have to listen to what his language is. Anything. And So I think practice for me, I always felt behind. When I got to college at Manhattan School of Music, I felt behind. At HSPVA, the arts high school in Houston, I felt behind. So I'd be in the practice room at lunch, with my taco roll, trying to learn these, trying to learn these McCoy Tyner solos or whatever. But practice is, and also when you're doing it right, it actually gets fun. But it is rough though, because you are secluded and you have to take that time as an artist for yourself to try to broaden, kind of what you think you understand about sound.
It's so interesting you said that about practice, because a lot of people, I think a lot of musicians, they don't know how to practice. They
Mm.
don't know how to structure a practice that's going to be productive. How did you develop yours to where it became productive for you? Because you can practice all day long and it's not productive. How did you
Yeah,
develop
well,
that as a young age when you was doing that?
I was that disciplined, but I think my discipline came around wanting to further understand what I was trying to do. And I knew I didn't quite sound as great as other friends, who had also been practicing. So how could I get better? And for a lot of us, also, it really takes playing. Like the music that we make is communal, so you got to be with people. You
Yeah.
have You can do it all alone in your room all you want, but at some point you got to meet some musician who didn't do what you thought they were going to do, and then actually start to try to improvise, and that is deep. And when you play with more musicians who come up with other ideas, other approaches, then you have to learn kind of how to be with people as much as you have to learn how to practice on your own. They go hand in hand. They are not separate. I was just telling my niece, I was like, as much as I think she's practicing, I was like, you better get out and play in front of some people too, just because because you need that kind of feedback, whether it's positive or negative. But also you have to feel how your sound matches or pulls against the band, especially in a rhythm section. So for me, having friends in high school, that helped me tremendously.
Mm.
The amount of gigs that we'd have, the gigs we play at school and off out in the city in Houston, those were equally important as to my sessions trying to learn a McCoy solo, was just being out in the world trying to play a set of music.
Did you start formal training, or did you learn how to read, or you had by ear? How did it work for you at the beginning?
Well, look, I want to say this. I think all training is formal. I don't think like because you paid for lessons is formal, or because it's a composer from Germany, then that's formal. I don't believe in that. I believe that everything is formal. The Cats on the Corner is formal training in that too. So I so I think the piano was the same way, and my teachers were like that too. But I took lessons from a woman named Yelena Kurinets, and she was first generation Russian immigrant from
Mm.
coming to Houston and starting a music school, and she really kind of like got my technique. To this day, I feel like I'm thankful for her really kind of like putting technique in my hands. But that's where it started. And like I said, the HISD, Houston Independent School District, really did have the music in the school too. So it was kind of like a feeder where people went from McGregor, then they went to Johnston. A lot of my friends went to Johnston for middle school, and then they came to HSPVA for high school.
Okay.
So that really was a track for us. I went to TH Rogers for middle school, but
Okay.
for high school I went to HSPVA. But yeah, I mean all of that is formal. Even even formal training is watching my friends be like, "What? You practice what?" That's formal too. If you can stomach somebody dissing you, it's also formal.
That's true. That is true. Oh my goodness. So were you was it all school, or did you church too, or just was anywhere you could play, you was playing?
My ambition didn't really work that way. I know a lot of musicians who, if there's a piano, they were going to play. It wasn't necessarily me. I practiced at home. I didn't play in church, and by the time I got to high school, I played in high school. Um, I wasn't quite. I mean, I didn't really. I wouldn't even say that I really clicked until maybe I was a junior in high school, and that made a big difference for me. So I think when you're young and you're playing, you want to find friends who want to play just as much as you.
Yeah.
And you need 10 friends that want to do it. You need about 3.
Yeah.
And that could carry you for the rest of your life. Just them 3, you
Those
know?
three.
And I think sometimes we might fixate on like, oh, I need like so many thousands of no. You need some love, one, and you need a love for the craft, two.
Mhm.
You need a few people around you who you can help build with. And I'm confident in that kind of relationship to community that we, in the way we work as musicians, that we need. And hopefully those ideas flower, but they really do. They need that kind of constant massage to get it to grow.
So when you graduated from HSPBA and you went to Hand School of Music, was it a culture shock? Was it a good transition? How was it for you?
It was definitely a shock. New York City is not Houston,
At
not at
all.
all. Not at all. And but also that's what attracted me to New York, and then also a lot of musicians who were coming up right behind me from HSPVA. We just all came to New York, as many of us as we could. We all came to the city to feel it. But when I got up here, I was like shocked, but also I was so thrilled because now I could go hear music if I could afford it, or sneak into a club. I could go hear music every night. Um, and that was what I wanted to hear. I wanted to watch people making it in the moment, right, at the highest level. And so the streets became the place where you learned about the city. You come to New York to watch the city. I came here to see the people on the street, to hear all the languages. In Houston, for as diverse as it is, when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily hear all of the languages of all the many communities that live in Houston. But in
Mhm.
New York, you're gonna hear it everywhere, all the time. Seeing folks that look like me who were from the Caribbean, right? All of a sudden speaking other languages, and they were not from Louisiana, you know. So it was, it was beautiful. Like, it was just opening, and thankful. It was one of the hardest things I did was, I think, coming to school here in New York. But the guy who really centered me was a guy named Jackie Bayard, the pianist at Manhattan School of Music. He's the reason I came to New York, was I wanted to study with him, and am thankful for that hard move, because it took me about 10 years to get used to New York, but I
Wow.
stayed with it, and now it's almost been 30 years.
Wow. So was Jackie Byard, was he your mentor?
He was my mentor, and he was my piano teacher for the 4 years I was at Manhattan School of Music. So every Monday, I just, I don't know. I would get whooped because this is an expansive pianist, and by expansive I mean he is expansive through history, through technique, through style, through how he transcribes, with every kind of part of his training that he brought into playing sound on the piano. And so he was teaching me that way too, and that was a nice shock for me. And that's the reason I came. I came to get that burn. So those 4 years with Jackie were tremendous.
So what was his first statement to you before you started class that that just shocked you into you better get in your game and better play well? What was that statement he said to you?
Well, in the first lesson, he said, he stopped me because we were two pianos side by side, right? And so one he played on the right side, I on the left side. We started playing this song, and he stopped me halfway. He said, "Man, stop!" He said, "Man, you play too damn loud." I was like, he compared it to a very famous piano duet record. But he said, "No, you got to figure out your dynamics." Look, before we even talked about language, he was like, "Just you need to get your dynamics together."
Wow.
Um, that was that just let me know right then, right? Like, this is going to be much deeper than I ever thought, thankfully. But I should pull my dynamics together. So even I felt like learning from him that way for 4 years really also taught me how to play duet piano with another pianist. Like, how do you support one, then how do you push? But you have to really kind of give and take, especially in the dynamic level.
Wow.
Hmm.
That is so interesting. Okay, so you were in school, you was gone to nightclubs. Were you gigging while you were in school, or is it just
Yeah,
listening? Or
I was gigging with friends, and had a lot of friends who were singers, so I played a lot of gigs with singers that were at the school. That was extremely helpful. Because a pianist is really kind of supposed to know how to work with, I think really are supposed to know how to work with singers. It's a real close relationship. I ended up marrying a singer who went to Manhattan School of Music, Alicia. So I'm thankful for, like, all these vocal, the way that the voice and the piano work together. It's a long history, hundreds of years of that. You know what I mean? So I feel like that was what I was learning. I had a couple other friends, trumpet player who passed away recently, Ed Anderson. He was, also from New Orleans, but he was also trying to do his work, and it was helpful just to kind of have some friends around. Eric Harlan came from Houston. He came to New York a year after I got there. So we would play gigs together. I had friends from Queens. So it was like little gigs, little things. But they were also, I remember those gigs like just as much as I would remember, Newport Jazz Festival. I remember those gigs in college because they were scary to me. Playing in front of people, playing in front of people is not easy, and we kind of like fly it off like, oh, it's something that you can just do, but it really takes some care, to go into a room and invite others to come sit with you as you make sound and you pass it to them and they pass energy back to you. There's a lot going on in the room, so I was trying to learn how to do that.
So do you remember your first gig, like your very first gig in New York? Like, it's like, I'm playing in New York. This is my first. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, but I wouldn't call it a gig though. The gig was actually my senior recital from Manhattan School of Music. And I felt like what I did on that recital is I didn't like any of the drummers at school. Eric Harlan had left, so he wasn't there anymore. So I didn't like any of the drummers. So I said, I'm gonna do my recital without drums. And that'll be my challenge to myself. Can I make a good set without drums? So I had bass, oboe, and tenor saxophone. And then I played beats in between the songs that I'd made. And I think that was the first time I heard all of my ideas in 45 minutes. I never really heard them all meet each other that way. And since also my family, kind of a lot of them flew up from Houston, were also in the room that day, I was overwhelmed to tears at the end of the concert, standing in front of the crowd of friends and family that have just heard what I think is the most important expression to me. And that's when I knew I was in New York. It wasn't when I was out in the city. It was actually when I was in New York and I just played. I only had 45 minutes of good music. That's all I had. I gave that, right? I felt that. And it was undeniable that was what I should try to do for the rest of my life, is make sure that I could get all of the good ideas that I feel are important into a space to share with some people. And it's definitely what I've been chasing ever since. But that's when I felt like I was in New York.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is so cool. So when you graduated, how did you get your path navigating to where you were gigging in New York, and how did that come about? How did that?
Just thanks to Eric Harlan. Eric Harlan started gigging with a saxophonist named Greg Osby, and Greg was about to go on a European tour, and so Eric had kind of gave a very solid recommendation to Greg, and without Greg even hearing me play a note, he hired me to go on tour with him in Europe for 2 weeks while I was a senior in school. And that was kind of when it started. So Greg was recording for Blue Note, and we went on this tour, and my audition was basically talking to him on the phone. He didn't hear me play anything until we got to Vienna. And that started a relationship with Greg that lasted for a while, and also got me to my relationship with Blue Note Records too. It's because of that. I also say that about Eric Harlan because it's Eric, that gave me my recommendation. It's my homeboy who gave me the recommendation that would really like shift, the path. He's like, oh, you should hear Jay. He don't play any gigs around, but you should hear him. Pleasantville, you know what I mean? Pleasantville. So that was that really started it, and then I signed to Blue Note, and that started an 18-year relationship with them, and it kept moving.
Wow. So it sounds like it's really important with relationships. It was relationships with other musicians that opened up door and another door and another door for you, and keeping those relationships. So how important is that for me? Because I think a lot of musicians don't understand it. They're so in their bubble of practicing and creating, but they're not understanding the importance of relationships with other musicians. How is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, these are things that you learn over time about what you think is important. And I might say a lot of what I learned from my family, the good and the bad part about it. You know what I mean? How when you're on the road, you're not playing a gig 23 hours a day. you're traveling or sleeping for 23 hours and you play for 1 hour, right? So most of your time is just going to be with that person away from instruments, you know. So how do you relate to people? And you know, how do you carry a conversation, or how do you show up to dinner? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. These are, I think, they're simple parts of being a citizen that you're supposed to understand. What is respect? How do you earn respect? How do you give respect? You know, that's how you play too. And I think people who want to make great music, they look for that. And sometimes their personality shows up with the same amount of beauty as their sound. Sometimes not, you know. And you also have to figure out how you manage that too. So it's a, it's a, it's a, it's push and pull. I think, you know, relationships with other musicians that are not about music are really important, to be able to call somebody, you know, and talk about something else other than the sound, you know. When I call people, when I call elders, and you know, just to check in on them, especially during the pandemic, just make sure everybody's cool. You know, that's a relationship thing. That ain't got nothing to do with I'm gonna play C7 before your F7, all right? But I'm gonna play it like it ain't got nothing to do with that. You know, to have lunch with people, just to, you know, I don't know. I think when we're in school, at least when I still teach at New England Conservatory, but when we're in school, we might forget that part, you know. And I think you think of your friends just as your friends, but for me,
Yeah.
like not your friends. Like, that's, hopefully you can keep a group of people around you that really support you, and you support them, and that might actually lead to a beautiful and fruitful environment for you to make music in.
That's good. That's real good. I know when I was reading that when you was working with Greg Osby, and then you got your friends from the group to bandwagon. Is that how that was formulated? Talk about that.
Yeah, well, meeting Taras Mateen and Nasheet Waits, you know, that was another life-changing moment, because I didn't know what they were playing. And I don't think they knew either, but we definitely didn't know together as a band. And I often tell people who are looking to start bands, like, don't start bands with people you know what they're gonna do. That's boring music. only your ideas to come out of other instruments. So anyway, Taras and Nasheed, they push, and we're all air signs too. So there was just a natural relationship, but it didn't revolve around resolution. You know, it evolved around possibility. And Taras and Nasheed have been, you know, now I guess it's nearly 23 years we've been together. Still
Wow.
is, you know, thick. But that's where we met, and we stayed together after being in that band New Directions. That was you know, we did a 20-city tour across America in before my first record came out, but it was that 20-city tour that really showed us as a rhythm section, oh, you know, there could be something in this, but we're gonna have to work to find it, and I think we have.
And how did you come with the name bandwagon?
Well, I don't know. You know, like, there's a lot of quartets and quintets, and I just didn't want that. So I thought, you know, anybody could join this, and they ain't got to know all the history. You can just jump on it, and it's cool. You heard that new bag? Which one are you talking about? I don't know. The one that just
Oh,
came, I heard about.
oh glory.
All bandwagon too.
They're all the bandwagon. Wow. So so you did projects outside of the bandwagon as well, right?
I always do. You know, it's important for me, collaboration, and even without outside of music, collaborating with people is maybe one of the most important parts of my practice. Whether it's historians or filmmakers or choreographers or artists and sculptors, like, for me, that's also the world too. It's not simply jazz musicians. And also the models of some of that also evolved from what Duke Ellington looks at. You know, Duke Ellington's working with Alvin Ailey. Duke Ellington's working with film. Duke Ellington's working with costume and lighting and stage design. Ellington and Strayhorn, they are dealing with making scenes about
Mm.
history too. Sometimes I think, so for me, that felt like a place to meet other artists and see what could come from these elaborate, kind of very elaborate other ways of approaching art making, that didn't also start from, okay, so how's the song going to start? What's the intro? You know, when you work with a filmmaker, the tedious process of making sound for film is very different than just going to a club and making up something from your life in a moment and then having it almost disappear. The film kind of lasts, you know, in a different way for a much longer period of time. I can still watch it. So how do you make something that you think can last on film? How do you think that you can make that something that can last for a choreographer to give to their dancers to dance to? You know, that's very different than for an audience that just sits and listens, you know, and absorbs that way. So for me, collaboration kind of sits in the very center of the way I like to work, you know.
I was just reading an article actually yesterday about from Broad. It was on Broadway World Dance, and it was talking about the Martha Graham Dance Company
Mm-hmm.
and your songs
Mm-hmm.
with a canticle for innocent comedians.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. That just
Talk,
fit. Well, they're still, you know, they're still. I think they have one more performance tonight. Martha Graham Dance Company. It's the last thing that I kind of have done was making a 42-minute solo piano piece for them, for the company. And that you know, when I was at Manhattan School of Music, I would take a humanities class, and that was where I first learned of Martha Graham. Who is Martha Graham, this choreographer who really thought about dance and costuming and interaction in a very different way? You know, the other composers she worked with, the set designers from Isamu Noguchi, you know, like, I mean, she's like looking for the meeting place, you know? Um, I'm excited by that. And so it was an honor to work with them. And they will continue to perform that piece. They go on the road next week, I think, to Athens, and they'll continue to perform it to a recording that I'm. But for me, that's important. Working with choreographers like them, or Kyle Abraham, or Jamar Roberts from Alvin Ailey, or Lonzo King from Lions Ballet, or Ronald K. Brown from Evidence Dance Company. These dance companies, they out here doing the work right now, you know, and they work. There's
yeah,
no
they do.
keeping for the dancers. The dancers work. I don't know. I'm not gonna talk about other people's work ethic. I'm just gonna compare it to mine. They are working and are inspiring me to want to work harder.
Wow. Wow. So how was it working with Duvernay on 13 and Selma? How was that?
I mean, you know, Ava is, you know, Ava is Ava. What? I mean, Ava is really Ava, meaning you won't stop her. And I think working on Selma was when we first started working together. She's like getting this kind of large budget to work on a film about Martin Luther King. I mean, it's extraordinary. You have to. There was a lot of unknown about that, you know. And if you look at that film now, and you look at the cast that's in that film, it's deep.
Mhm.
Who been brought to that film? And Arthur Jaffa and Bradford Young with cinematographers on it. You know, like there's a community of people in that film that I think are here for a reason. And we were both learning together, Ava and I, really like learning together about how is this going to work. I was just laughing the other day. We were driving on 56th Street, just off West Side Highway, and we were passing a club called Terminal 5. And I remember one night going to Terminal 5 to see Flying Lotus with my wife. And we're walking to the club, right? But I'm working on Selma. But tonight I'm like, I'm gonna go see some music. So we're walking to go see Flying Lotus, right? And all of his extravagant, you know, film. And, you know, he got all these projections and crazy sound and people smoking out, right? So we're walking to the club. My phone ringing. I pick it up. It's Ava. She's like, "Where's my music?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming." I said, come on, Jason, come on, Jason, come on, Jason. You know, um, it's helpful when you're working with people who also are pushing, right? Like they're like, "No, this, you know, let's get it together." And I think we got to the finish line with it. And but it's working with film is a real task, but it if it's done right, it's really powerful. But it is a task that is not for the meek. It's real work.
So what did you learn from how did you grow as a composer and pianist working with her on those two films? How did you grow?
Well, I think when with film, the one thing is you're making sound that goes also with dialogue, right? With costume, with scene, with actors, and so you have to find the place that lives in the scene and also around the dialogue too. So you make something that's kind of open, that can help. And then if there's something that the audience needs to feel, then how can you push the dialogue, right? And it's trying to find the balance of that. It's very hard for me. But I'd say that I've been working with a lot of artists who have been dealing with narrative. Even the artist Joan Jonas is an artist I've been working with since 2005, and I had really also learned a lot about how to deal with narrative from working with her. So even the first cue of Selma is actually kind of a remix of some music I made for Joan Jonas. The shape, the scent, the feel of things, a piece she did at Dia Beacon's museum up in Beacon, New York. But so it was really kind of like I was trying to find ways that the worlds could work together. And then also as a pianist that you could really just try to find themes. I like themes, really simple themes. And if I could find more of them, then hopefully the film would have like just enough. The score in that film, Selma, is very kind of in the back, but it's just more there as like something for you to kind of just be aware of, and then it disappears.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. A pivotal moment for you. Name me three pivotal moments for you that's happened so far for Jason Moran. 3 pivotal moments.
Well, one was convincing my wife to marry me. Meeting Alicia Hall Moran, meeting my partner in life at Manhattan School of Music, that was pivotal. Having children also extremely pivotal, because then I understood why I play music. I play music not only to make music, but I also play music for the health of my family. And that's pivotal. To raise children is pivotal to me. And the other one is my parents sticking me in piano lessons as a kid. I think those 3 moments, I put them like I'm kids is hard. Kids are hard, and they humble you all the way down.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
And it is rough. My boys, they're taller than me right now. They're like 6'1", they're 14, they're beautiful, powerful, planning for high school in New York City, but I think, in the recent years, that for me, nothing compares to being a parent. Not a thing compares to being a parent. Parents know this. They know the struggle. They know
Absolutely.
the love.
Absolutely. I got a 24-year-old. She's gonna be 25 next month. So I know.
Bless the kid fruit.
Glory. So how did you become artistic director at the Kennedy Center, Jazz at Kennedy? How did you do that? How did that come about?
That's a question I couldn't quite answer. But I started working there in 2000, I think 11, or 12, one of those years, and I think I started as an artistic advisor, and it was after the beautiful, great Dr. Billy Taylor had passed away, and he started the program. Dr. Taylor started the program in the 90s. So when he passed away, they were looking for someone to continue that work, and that's when I was brought in, and I was pretty young to start a job like that. But I was thankful to be there because I care about the music a lot, and also care about the legacy that Dr. Taylor, a brilliant pianist and historian, what he had made there. So, and then over the years, the title shifted, but it really is just the title. My work there is to continue to kind of try to continue to open the doors for the music, to make sure it has a place on the stage.
So what is going on at the Kennedy Center now for Jazz at Lincoln Center? What's going on? I mean, at Kennedy Center, what's going on for you now?
Well,
what's the big thing? What's the big reveal?
The one big thing that just happened over the weekend was we celebrated Charles Mingus's upcoming centennial by having the Mingus Big Band there. And that's big, to celebrate the beautiful Charles Mingus. And then on Saturday, I'll team up with my fellow Houstonian Robert Glasper for a rare duet, a piano duet. In the concert hall. So it's kind of a big room, and our two pianos, which we've done every once in a while, and we get to do it every few years. So Robert and I will come back together. The other big thing that'll happen later in the summer is we're continuing or restarting the program that beautiful Betty Carter started. The singer Betty Carter started a program called Jazz Ahead. It's for young artists who are 24 and under, and we bring 23 or 24 students from all over the world together to work with them on music for a few weeks in DC at the Kennedy Center. And so that will open up too. That's always about the future, right? Getting these new minds back into the music,
The
giving them
young people.
something that they can take back to their homes and to their bands and change the world. But yeah, those are the things that I'm excited about, as we continue. Because now we're just starting to kind of like fully open back up, and that feels good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the greatest advice you can give to a young person, a young musician today? What's the greatest advice you can give?
Well, I'd say I wouldn't know if this was advice, but it'd just be a word that would say, at some point you'll have to forsake everything to get better at whatever it is. And if you're talking about music, then you're gonna have to like forsake your friends, and it might just be for some hours. You have to really spend some time alone with your craft, and you will have to be the one that assesses it the hardest. And if you keep that alive in your practice, then maybe you won't ever be tired by it, or bored by it. You'll always be inspired by it. Looking not necessarily for something to get better, right? But looking for another angle. So that's the advice I try to give my students. I try to prepare them to have multiple viewpoints into their work. Not simply, I got to play a good solo, because that's the trap that a lot of people fall
Hmm. Wow.
in. Yeah.
If anyone has a question for Jason, now's the time. You can type it in the screen, and we will
File
be
in and
able to
file.
answer. So any of the people that are watching, and I thank you everyone for
Yeah.
watching. If you have any questions for Jason, now's the time, because I think it's a rarity that you give interviews. So I really feel very honored.
Yeah. It's really
The
important.
H-Town thing that I got the interview with
Yeah.
Jason Moran.
It's important. And I keep thinking about Houston and all the things that hopefully in the future will actually come to light. And so, we'll have to continue to keep our conversation going, because there's always more to do in our beloved city, for the music.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are you coming back anytime this year for Houston? Any kind of concert or event or initiative or something?
Oh, you know what? Is that confirmed? I have to. There was one thing. I have to see if that's happening or not. Right now. So,
Oh, Jason.
it is this year. I was there. Yeah. Anyway, how do we apply to the Betty Carter program? If you go to the Kennedy Center website, there should be a place for Betty Carter's Jazz Ahead is what it's called. And the requirements only is really that you're under a certain age, and then you make a recording of your compositions, 2 original compositions, and 1 performance of the song All the Things You Are. And I put that song All the Things You Are on there as a requirement, not simply to hear you play the tune. It's really take the title seriously.
All the things you are. That's so true.
Yeah, take the title seriously. But anyway, that's how I think you apply to Jazz Ahead. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I see all these names, but I don't see any questions. Let me just double check. Oh, one question is, have you worked with T.S. Monk? Have you worked with Elon Monk's son?
Yes, I worked with TS. We did a performance of the Town Hall music, Monkey Town Hall. We performed it. This was maybe over 10 years ago at SF Jazz in San Francisco, and that was oh wait a minute, that kid, he should make sure he applies. I saw him who played with me at the Underground. Make sure he applies. I'll write him too. But what was I saying? Oh, T.S. Monk. Yes.
Yeah.
He's really carried that legacy on, and I've known him since maybe when I was still in school at Manhattan School of Music. I've known him, and he was he's really helpful in keeping the name out here too. You know, the Monk family is for real. You know. Oh, there you go. All right, there's Perry. Okay, great. Yeah, yeah. What's the most
Uh,
thing you do in your music? I couldn't be able to tell you that. You know, I think listeners tell me what is important in my music. I don't know what it is. If I get to the finish, then that means I did something good. If I got to the last note, sometimes I did. I couldn't really tell you what I do in music. You know, I couldn't tell you that.
someone asked, will you be playing or recording more with Bill Rochelle and
But,
Brian Blade?
all right, you know, let's see. Are we doing? Well, I don't know if anything is scheduled right now. Frizzell and Blade and I, we did a concert in Big Ears in Nashville. Not Nashville, Knoxville, a few weeks ago, and that was recorded. But we don't think that that's something that necessarily we're going to put out. But yeah, maybe in the future. You know, those are some of the busiest musicians out here right now. Um, is there an album coming soon? The next record I'm making in May is the record for James Reese Europe. Something I've been working on for the past 4 years. So I'll finally go in the studio and make that record. That's the next thing I want to do, you know?
Oh, I wanted to ask, have you recorded an album with your wife? Have y'all actually recorded an
You
album?
know, on some of my records, and I recorded some of her songs, and on her record, I play on her record too. So Alicia has two records out. One is called Heavy Blue, and one is called um, Heavy Blue and Here Today. Yeah, both of those records. And all of our music that we make right now is on Bandcamp. We don't support streaming services, but so we sell it on Bandcamp only as a thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked, can you talk about the connection between J.R. Europe's impact on the broader musical culture?
Right. Well, James Reese Europe, I think what we're understanding now is like a lot of the musicians that we love weren't simply musicians; they were also activists. But they didn't necessarily, yeah, Kevin. But they didn't necessarily, they weren't branding themselves as that. So James Reese Europe is around in the early 1900s, and what James Reese Europe does is consider the scale for the music, and he kind of gathers up large scales from 150 musicians to 60 musicians to World War One. And so I think what he did was I think what James Reese Europe also did was he made the way that the like black brass sounds, you know, the way the way HBCU bands sound,
Mm-hmm.
like go back 100 years, is James Reese Europe at the beginning of that saying, nah, when we gather it all together, it can sound like this. Second line gets at it too, right? In New Orleans too. That's what Louis Armstrong is talking about with King Oliver. It's like what it is when black brass gets together and improvises together. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think he really lays out that as a through line, but also he lays out a black ownership part of black music too. He started a union for black musicians so that they could be, for me, what I understand to call the Clef Club was the name of the union. And it's for black musicians working on Broadway in New York, uh, elsewhere, to make sure that they were taken care of, not necessarily just on the stage, but off the stage too. So the Clef Club, like he's really looking at it as a model. And here we are, 2022, doing whatever we're doing, you know. But I think James Reese Europe really pushes in a way and dies at around age 40, you know,
Mm-hmm.
tragically. He dies at the hands of his own drummer, stabbed in the neck. And yeah, it's tragedy. But his tenacity to make that kind of work that he did on the scale that he did, in the danger that he did, for me, that's the line. You know, that's the line to strive for.
I wanted to ask, I know one time I saw you live, because you don't never come on live, but you came on live one time and you was talking about some artifacts that you've been grabbing up. What's that about, sir?
I'll bring some for you. And then I was looking around. Um, to my well, I think that like we were talking before, it's not simply the music; it's also sometimes the object around the music. The most recent thing that I bought is an IOU that Fats Waller wrote to somebody for $50. He owes somebody
Wow.
$50 in 1936. So you can go to your inflation calculator and see how much $50 was in 1936. Which is
Wow.
a lot of money. It's a sizable amount of money today.
Okay.
But that's the last thing I bought. One thing I bought was, all these quarters. They made a set of quarters that had Duke Ellington on them. So I have rows and rows, rolls and rolls of
Wow.
quarters, so that Duke Ellington quarters. I have Duke Ellington's address book. I have Art Tatum's piano award. I have Art Tatum's handkerchiefs. I have Prince's sketch for his emancipation symbol when he left Prince and became just the symbol.
Oh my goodness.
I have a
So
lot
what
of
are
stuff.
you doing with all of that stuff? What are you doing with it? What you doing with it?
Hoarding. You know, have like a hoarder show for like collectors. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh God.
actually, I'm collecting it so that, and then I'm giving it all away. So recently, I gave all of my artifacts of Jackie Byard, all of his music, I gave to New England Conservatory because that's the school that has been upholding Jackie's legacy, and he taught there for many years, and he's from Massachusetts. So I have like 150 pieces of music that I gave to the school last week.
Wow.
So for me, it's I'm not hoarding it. I'm gonna give it to the Schomburg. I'm gonna give it to the museum down in D.C. To Rutgers, the places that I think are also keeping the archive together, and because it will need that kind of cataloging too for the future.
Well, let me just share this platform that we're on is from the Rhythm Blues Preservation Society, and it's been around since 2018. Perry Thompson, who is actually on the screen, he is he is his brainchild. And I joined on board last year. I'm the artist in residence and VP
Right.
COO, very beginnings, humble beginnings. But
Mm-hmm.
the goal is to one day have an actual headquarters and center where we can have the artifacts that you just said you have. So you can hold on to them, Jason, until we're ready to get them from you so we can have them in New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, it's important. I mean, I know lots of musicians, and after they pass away, the stuff is passed to their families, and then what happens with it? Like some of the families keep it, some of the families chunk it. There's tons of stories about hearing about Sun Ra's archives sitting in a dumpster in Chicago, and somebody being like, "Wait, that's Sun Ra's stuff." So, wait a
Yep.
minute, throw that away. Or Randy Weston, who was telling me about James Reese Europe, saying that somebody's found a lot of the band music with James Reese Europe in a dumpster, on 140th Street, and the East. So wait, how do our treasures get put in dumpsters? How do they get put in hefty glad bags or whatever? How does this happen?
They don't know
So
the value. They don't know the value
how do we treasure?
of history, of the music history. Let me ask you this question.
That?
Why is it important for us to preserve Black music culture in America? Why is it
Well,
important?
because it's one of the few things that we have that actually charts our beginning, because those recordings are made for Black music at not long after Emancipation Proclamation, Emancipation, quote unquote. But where it's happening, Scott Joplin is writing it down at the end of the 1800s, writing it down, right? He's writing it down. Those recordings of Burt Williams are happening at the beginning of the 1900s. We have like post, that post, we have what we sound like all the way to now.
Yeah.
But it's unbroken story in sound that we have for ourselves. You know whose sound we don't have? We don't have Mozart's sound.
Mm.
Yeah, we wrote down, but we don't know how it sounded when he was standing in the room. But I know what Duke Ellington sounded like, right? I know what Nina Simone sounded like, right? I know what Jerry Allen sounds like. It's real. I saw her play it and I heard it, and I can hear the records before I knew her, right? We have that as a history. So, and it just don't exist just in the records. So, it exists also in the places where it happened. The little club or the little shotgun house where people play it every week, right? Those places are important for our culture too. The place, the sound, the residue of the music that we make, the feelings that people have when they're in a room, that also for me is the archive. And if we get to talk about it, that means we keep the archive alive.
So in that same vein, why is it important for people to donate to the Rhythm and Blues Preservation Society?
Right, because we can have a conversation about this, which is also about a future, right? And archiving for the future and making sure we don't leave anything out, right? So yeah, donate. I'll donate. Who's joining me in donating today?
Oh, yes, please. If you're going to donate. Our cash app is RBPS18. Let me type this on here right now so folks don't have no excuse. It's cash app $ RBPS18. Or you can PayPal, same thing, RPPS18.
Look, because this work out here is not, it's not simply for the love. I mean, love can, and passion, just like a car, it runs out of gas sometimes. And so we always will need support, from people who are doing the very biggest of thing that you can't ever stop seeing, to the people who you have no idea, but who are actually doing the work. And the work that needs to be done at all levels and all scales. So I'm glad you all are making that happen. And congratulations.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much for being on.
Always a pleasure.
I know that you're busy. You're doing a lot of great work, and we're just so happy that you are, and you're doing it in New York and Houston. Hopefully, we'll see you in Houston soon. And you let me know when you're in town. I definitely would love to see you perform. I haven't seen you perform actually in years, but I'd love to see you here in Houston. H-Town misses you. You definitely need to come through.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing. Any last words that you want to give to the people that's listening about Jason Moran, music, jazz, whatever it is? You got 4 minutes.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have anything, not a good parting word. I don't have, my parting words is never as good as the words that were inspired earlier. But I'd say, trust. Trust. Just trust. And every once in a while, your trust will be tested. So now my sons are back there yelling at each other. So actually, let me go break up this fight. No. They're not trusting each other right now.
You might want to go work on that.
No, it's a real pleasure. But yeah, trust. That's what I feel like I have in the music, of the musicians that I meet, the ones who I've yet to play with. I trust that they're doing the work, and that's what keeps me healthy, I'd say. So trust, y'all.
That's awesome. Oh, one last question. Yeah. Somebody asked about hip hop. How important it is to you? Hip hop and jazz. How important is it to you?
Well, it's the tree. It's the same tree. I mean, and I'm thankful I grew up when I did, as the music was becoming, right? As it was becoming, and it continues to become. And I don't know, I listen to it a ton, and a lot of my phrasing is still built off of it. And it's always good to see another generation of people come around and make something different and new. So, it won't tell us everything. And right now it's being more soul than anything. But that doesn't taint the power of the form, right? So that's hip hop for life, Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. See y'all later.
Appreciate you. Thank you again. We'll be back again on Monday with Mike Phillips. That's next on the list.
Nice. All right, y'all. Bye.